Yeah, I know you've been waiting. Now, before we begin this evening's video address, if you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, to place a people under military subjugation is one thing, but to keep them there for the long haul, that's an entirely different horse of another color. And under white supremacy, this is what's happened with us. You see, if you're going to keep people under subjugation for the long haul, you gotta do it from the inside. Outside subjugation, external oppression, it's too obvious and it makes it where the people have a singular enemy that they can focus their will against. What you've got to do is you've got to get them to become collaborators in their own oppression. And how do you do that? Well, you gotta get a few of their own to help sell them up the river. You got to get a few of their own to help actively, knowingly take part in the oppression of their group. This is where the enemies within come into play. This is the part that the enemies within play under white supremacy when it comes to subjugating black people in this country and around the world. Now, although everybody's got their own particular number of how many there are, the enemies within can, broadly speaking, be lumped into three categories. You've got the political media operatives. These are the Kamala Harris and roly-poly types. They're the ones who, basically, if they're not the children of immigrants, they're certainly the children of career bootlicks, people whose families have basically been collaborating with white supremacy since forever. There seems to be no shortage of them. And these are the ones who are hoping the white supremacy is going to give them a job. They're the ones, all the bootlicks, all of the enemies within are hoping the white supremacy is going to give them something, some crumbs off the table. But the political media operatives, these are the ones who are hoping the white supremacy is going to assign them a political post and go ahead and float them some white donor dollars so they can keep it. These are the ones who are also wanting to make sure the white supremacy gives them a job at some media company. Roly-poly's been auditioning for a new job ever since CNN cut him from his old one. And if they can't get a full-time gig on some white cable station or some white supremacist publication like the New York Slimes, then what they'll do is they'll at the very least want to have some sort of guest spot. Let me be the occasional panel contributor, quote unquote, or the occasional guest columnist. That's enough to satisfy most of these enemies within, long as there's the occasional, if not steady, paycheck for them. Why, Corinne Stud Pierre is a butt kisser par excellence, but before she became some know-nothing White House communicator, her Twitter feed has a picture of her with her two benefactors on it. But it's what you see from her last year that says a lot. NBC's website did a little story about her last year, and in it, she was bragging that she's never had to apply for a job. Why, in her chosen line of work, ever since I started doing this white media thing, I've never had to apply for a job. And you'll notice that the story has a picture of her with Mika the Bigot Brzezinski. Talk about truth in advertising. But as we all know, Corinne Stud Pierre happens to be Haitian and she's LGBTQ, etc., etc. So this woman actually thinks that what little that she's gotten from white supremacy, she thinks that the steady employment on again, off again, I should say, that she's been allowed under white supremacy is because she's so smart or because of her connections. She actually believes that crap. See, these are the kind of lies that the enemies within have to tell themselves. These black bootlicks, these are the lies they got to tell themselves. She says that the most important weapon that she has is her Rolodex, because she's made so many contacts over the years. White supremacy already marked her as being a willing, compliant tool. It wasn't because she was so smart or that she's got contacts. It's because they know a freaking sellout when they see one. Just like with Roly Poly, they let Corinne Stud Pierre's family in because they knew that this woman was going to be working against us, and indeed she has. As far as they're concerned, okay, as long as she continues to scream the lies and be sure to deflect and dodge and use her melanin in order to be a shield, an image shield to hide behind to sell white supremacy's lies, we'll go ahead and throw her some crumbs. She thinks it because somehow she's good. That somehow she's earned her position when it was handed to her, like everything else under white supremacy. The system of goodies, giveaways, and guarantees that the white supremacists and a number of their non-white collaborators happen to have in place. That's the glue that holds white supremacy together. And I found it very interesting that she would use that phrase, that the most important weapon she's got is her Rolodex. Now, if that little expression sounds familiar, it should. I told you last year during Kamala Harris's damned to fail presidential run about how the New York Times ran a story about Kamala Harris's so-called secret weapon. And what was Kamala Harris's secret weapon? Her sorority. You see, these clowns, they don't even have enough sense to switch up the talking points. Kamala Harris's secret weapon, I've got some contacts in some do-nothing sorority. And Corinne Stud Pierre, I've got contacts in the white media and in white political circles. Yeah, they don't even bother to change up the talking points. This is what the bootlicks are proud of. They can't be proud of anything they've done. They have no accomplishments. They have no achievements. That is, unless you call being low-down Willie Brown's side piece an achievement or an accomplishment. And for Corinne Stud Pierre, God only knows what the hell she's done. The less said about that, the better. But you see, the bootlicks don't have any real skills. The enemies within who have been collaborating with white supremacy, these turncoats who have been working against the black community's interests, they don't have any actual skills, and they know this. These guys know that it's certainly not what they know that has gotten them what few little crumbs white supremacy's flicked off the tables for them. They understand that full well. They obey what white power tells them to do, and they get a pat on the head most of the time. And if they're very, very lucky, if they do some real dirt and tell some real lies, they might get a couple of crumbs. Simone Sanders lied through her buck teeth, claiming that Joe Biden wasn't responsible for the hyper-incarceration that followed the 94 crime bill. Why? That was the states. And when she got checked on it, well, you know, the states just didn't do it the right way. That's what that was. You got to lie and lie big because you got to show that you're going to get out there and be the crash dummy for white supremacy. That's the cost of getting a job in the White House basement, which is where Simone Sanders and Corinne Stud Pierre happen to be relegated to now. I certainly hope that there's not too many rats and dripping pipes downstairs, I hope. Well, not too many. But this is what they're about. So when Corinne Stud Pierre talks about her contacts, she's referring to whatever white influence peddler that she's been hoping to get a job from. Do you truly believe that this woman's never had to apply for a job? She just calls somebody up and says, hey, I need some work. Really? You'll notice that that's what she says. She carried water for Obama, but I guess Obama didn't require her to actually apply for a job. They just said, here you go. I'm sure that her reputation for being a feckless bootlick precedes her, but still, this woman has no power. No one really cares what she thinks. Okay, so she had some do-nothing job under Obama, and when you ask her what the hell she was doing, she can't tell you. So we all see how much came of that job. She's only been on cable TV occasionally. That's this woman's job qualifications. That's her freaking resume. So what does that tell you? It damn sure ain't about qualifications. It ain't about achievements. White supremacy does not hire these bootlicks based on their resume. It hires them based on how willing they are to tell lies to undermine us. Are they willing to lend their melanin to white supremacy's anti-black propaganda? That's the actual job that she carries out. It doesn't require brains because being a bootlick means that you are devoid of intelligence. If the Corinne Stud Pierres and the Simone Mammy Sanders and the Roly Poly Martins had brains, they wouldn't be bootlicks now, would they? Oh, but she's never had to apply for a job, or so she says. So to her, that's what all her bootlicking is about. You notice that that's what she starts off with. What's important to her? Making sure that I can stay gainfully employed, even if only on again, off again. Now, you and I may not be willing to sell our souls or sell out our people just to get a low six-figure job, but Corinne Stud Pierre is. She prides herself on that. Her life is defined by whether she can get a job from this or that white powers that be. And don't go kidding yourself that this immigrant cares about black people. She identifies as LGBT, not black. Haven't you ever noticed that whenever these so-called intersectionalists come up to you and say, I am not defined merely by blackness, I am defined by a lot of things, the reality is they never straddle the fence when it comes to how they identify themselves, at least not in front of white folks. In front of black people, it's all about, well, you can't put me into a box. There are many things that define me. But whenever these fools get in front of white media, whenever they get in front of white folks, it's always they point out that they're an immigrant or they're biracial or they're LGBT. They don't sit there and do that. I defy all categories. They only try that rhetorical con game with you and me. Whenever they're in front of black people, then they do the you can't put me into a box. Yeah, in other words, hey, just because I may have a couple of black genes, don't expect that I'm going to be carrying any water for black empowerment. Don't expect me to be saying anything that's really going to be a benefit to black people. Nah, I'm just trying to figure out how I can appease these white liberals over here and whether or not they'll give me a pat on the head. Bootlicks are the true personification of the old saying, it's not what you know, but who you know, because bootlicks don't know anything. That's why white power loves them so much, or at least pretends to love them. They don't know anything, so they're totally non-threatening, at least to white power, but in the black community, letting these enemies within slither their way amongst us, they can be absolutely catastrophic. Because white supremacy doesn't just send these idiots in. What it does is it puts a little bit of money behind them. Try to prop them up, make them prominent. Make sure that you give them something resembling a steady paycheck. And this is so that they'll be able to have a car and be able to get some sort of mortgage, or at least they'll be able to get themselves a nice little rental lease in a high-class area, or at least higher class than the rest of the black downtrodden. And this is supposed to give them the flimsy trappings of affluence. See, you should listen to them because they're driving a nice car, or at least a nicer one. And look at where they're living, Simone Mammy Sanders. Oh, this is what these guys, hey, they have themselves a university job. They got a job as a professor of God knows what at some university. And because of that, you should listen to them, because white supremacy went ahead and gave them these few little crumbs. Here's your little car, here's your little job, a steady paycheck. And now you can pretend to be successful and tell these Negroes they ought to listen to you. Because after all, you've never had to apply for a job. Yeah, it was just handed to you. Because that's how it works when you're selling people out. You ain't got to apply to be one of the collaborators with white supremacy. They've already got you identified for that job. They're empty-headed suck-ups, these enemies within, who can only do what this or that white supremacist tells them to. They will not act for themselves, and they're incapable of thinking for themselves, so slavishly obeying white power is just fine with them. In fact, they prefer that. It's a hell of a lot easier than thinking. And even though her current gig is no more important than being an errand girl for a wrinkled up old racist and his Asian collaborator, Corinne Stud Pierre, in her mind, she thinks she's winning. Oh, she thinks to herself that she's climbed the mountaintop. She's got the brass ring. In her empty little head, she's actually thinking to herself that maybe there's some sort of high political office in her future. That's what a lot of these clowns are thinking. They're thinking, oh, I'm going to carry water for Joe Biden right now. And when Kamala Harris inevitably becomes president, yeah, because her last run went so well, didn't it? When she inevitably, hopefully the power of incumbency will be strong enough where they can just say, well, Kamala Harris has been living in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for a few minutes. And that being the case, you ought to make her president because she took a couple of photo ops in the Oval Office. And hopefully then I'll get upgraded to actually being a somebody in the White House. Maybe they'll let me give the White House daily briefings if I'm very, very lucky. And by the way, speaking of Simone Sanders, she describes herself on her Twitter bio as a rabid feminist. She could have left off the feminist part. That would have been a lot more accurate. And it goes without saying that just like Corinne Stud-Pierre, she doesn't mention black in her profile. And just like Corinne Stud-Pierre, Simone Mamie Sanders has a picture of Biden and Kamala Harris. So it's her freaking Twitter profile, but she has a picture of these two clowns just like Stud-Pierre. She doesn't even have herself featured in the picture. It's in her Twitter profile, though. You see, this is what happens when you're on the outside looking in. You gotta fake it. Oh, she wants people to think, oh, see, this is who I'm clicked in with. Yeah, you're so clicked in with them, you ain't even got a picture of yourself with them. Well, I suppose the picture of her tackling, Simone Sanders tackling that woman at that Biden rally, I guess as far as she was concerned, I'm not sure if I want to use that one. And, of course, there's not just these media coom political mouthpieces. You also have the ones who white supremacy's given political office to. Negro Jim Clyburn comes to mind with his annual fish fry. Yeah, these old do-nothing civil rights retreads, these fossils from a bygone era, ain't done a damn thing for black people in their entire worthless lives, but white supremacy said, we're gonna let y'all have a political office. That way the niggers can, see, instead of the niggers choosing their own leadership, we're gonna go ahead and preempt them. We're gonna go ahead and put you in there before these niggers decide to start trying to find their own leadership. We're gonna go ahead and have you say, hey, y'all ain't gotta look for nobody. I'm here to speak for you. I know y'all think about choosing your own leaders. Don't worry about it though. I've already got these white folks over here. These concerned white liberals who understand the plight of the Negro, and they gonna give me some money so that I can hoodwink you gullible darkies. So that I can lead our people to a better day. And as soon as Negro Jim Clyburn gets into office, first thing he does is start talking about all the stuff he can't do. And he's not opposing anything. And he's not taking the hard line on anything. And it ain't about black people. It's all about, y'all got to be politically reasonable now. And we got to do what's good for the party now. Well, what the hell's the party done good for black people? Well, it's the Republicans, you see, them Republicans. And if y'all just vote in the next midterms and then the next presidential election, why, we're just on the edge of a turning point. We're just about to turn the corner any moment now, but you gotta keep voting. You gotta keep voting in large numbers. And don't be asking for nothing, though. You can't ask for nothing until the Democrats feel like we got a large enough percentage. And when we do, we're gonna take care of the immigrants and everybody else. That's the hustle that these black politicos have been playing for the longest time. Cedric Richmond, same thing. Oh, and the rest of the congressional black talkers, this is the con game. They've signed on with white supremacy. You see, a lot of people have been talking about that whole Medicaid for all thing and to force a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives. But if the congressional black talkers were really serious about promoting black people's interests, just simply as a means of showing they can throw their weight around, they'd be the ones saying, hell, we ain't even got to wait for Alexandria Ocasio-Horseface to put something together. Hell, we'll go ahead and pull Nancy Pelosi's card, but that's the problem that they got. The top priority for these black bootlicks who are in political office is to not displease their white benefactors. Are they scared of being primaried? For a few of them, yeah, because they ain't got nothing going for them. But for a lot of them, the main reason happens to be, as far as they're concerned, they have escaped being black. The fact that they get to put on one of those congressional lapel pins. See, I have escaped being black. I am a member of Congress. That means I am not black anymore. As far as they're concerned, every time you talk to them, every time that they talk to us, or rather talk at us, because they never actually talk to us, they're talking at us. They always speak just like their white liberal counterparts. They always speak in terms as if they're not black people themselves, as if somehow they talk about black people as being some sort of anonymous, indistinct third group that they're talking about, a group that they're not part of. What the hell kind of representative is that? A representative who makes it very clear that he doesn't have anything in common with you, or at least he doesn't think he has anything in common with you. He speaks about you the same way that he would speak about an Iraqi in Fallujah. He talks about you the same way that he would speak about the freaking man on the moon. But he does not speak about black people as if he's one of them. Always speaking about black people in third person. Them, I'm talking about them over there, not me, because I ain't got nothing in common with them. So yeah, these so-called black politicians, they understand exactly what their job is. You better not rock the boat. You better not upset the apple cart. You better not ruffle any feathers. Black people should be the main ones making it very clear that for both Biden and for Nancy Pelosi, they can make both the White House's job and Nancy Pelosi's jobs impossible. They should be the ones leading the charge, making it very clear, hey, there's going to have to be some committee appointments or Nancy Pelosi ain't going to be leading nothing. She ain't going to be speaker of anything. But they're not going to. Just like when Joe Biden was talking grimy to these idiots on that Zoom call, you notice how none of those idiots have said anything since. Then you don't have any of them saying, well, Joe Biden was disrespectful as hell. And, we're going to have to rethink whether or not we're going to be voting for anything that he wants. Even if he does get these 1 or 2 Senate seats in Georgia, I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get anything through the House. The way that this guy's been acting disrespectful as hell, we're going to have to put him on notice. They're not doing anything. They're not giving any sort of pushback. They don't seem offended at all. You want to know why? Because they weren't. Lap dogs don't get offended when their master smacks them on the top of the head. Yeah, these black empty suits calling themselves politicians, they long ago became very accustomed to the fact that they're not actually going to have any power and that their job is to make sure that they take as much abuse on the regular as possible and take it with a smile and don't make too much of a fuss about it. Because after all, the same white powers that be that are slapping you around today, you're going to be depending on them to help your consulting business. Ain't that right, Mignon Clyburn? You're going to be depending on these same white people to arrange for these speaking fees, which is how white supremacy pays its bribes to its chosen henchmen. Make sure you get your speaking fees. Make sure that they throw you a couple of sweeteners in there. Oh, yeah, you got to come in for some abuse, but the upside of it happens to be they're going to take care of you marginally. But that happens to be the political and media tier of the enemy within. Now, the next rung down, the second of the 3 groups of enemies within, are the various hangers-on and flunkies. These guys, they try to put themselves as close to the orbit of the first tier as possible. They want to be seen in the presence of a Kamala Harris, or a Negro Jim Clyburn, or an Ayanna Pressley, or any of the rest of these fakers, frauds, phonies, fools, sellouts, suck-ups, and simps. For a quick example, you got Amy Allison. I've told you about her numerous times with that whole She the People con game that she's been running. The pork chop preachers and so-called activists, these are also other classifications of the second tier of the enemies within. These are the hangers-on. These are the ones who they may not have a political job. They may not have themselves some sort of political office that they hold. They don't have any sort of regular or occasional gig as a panelist on this or that cable news network or writing for this or that publication. But these are the ones who you usually see outside of those circles. White supremacy hasn't been handing them a regular paycheck, but they've been trying to figure out how to stay within the orbit of the upper tier, the first tier of enemies within. And that second tier, the hangers-on and flunkies, their job is to be white supremacy's man on the scene to control and corral us at the ground level. Essentially, their job is to be the black grassroots, or at least to con us into thinking that's what they are. They're supposed to be the black leadership at the local level. These are black leaders, according to the white media. They're supposed to be. See, that second tier of the enemies within, this is where the D. Ray McKessons come from. Whenever you have clowns like Byron Allen trying to manufacture black grassroots activists and such, this is where the Amy Allisons come in and the She the Peoples and all that garbage. This is where the mushmouths and the square jaws come in with the A-dunt scam. See, this is where these clowns come in. That second tier of enemies within, this is who the hell they are. Yeah, it's going to be very hard to find Kamala Harris at the ground level, especially because she knows black people are going to be interrogating her about Matrice Richardson, among many, many, many others. But at the ground level, you want to make sure that you got your flunkies set up. Whenever black people get outraged about the latest act of anti-black violence against us, the hangers-on and flunkies' job is to pretend to be as outraged as we are. And they're going to get in front of the cameras, and the white media is going to make sure that they're the ones that they speak to, because you got to make sure when your flunkies are out there trying to dissipate the energy and to lead people away from revolution, you got to make sure that you give these guys a lot of airtime so everyone sees them, so that everybody sees the propaganda. And so you can have this or that pork chop preacher, or this or that pulpit pimp, or this or that so-called civil rights activist, some clown who claims that they marched with Dr. King, or I was affiliated loosely with the Black Panthers. By the way, do you know that Clarence Thomas was affiliated with the Black Panthers when he was in college? I'm not making that up. He was. And look at the guy today. So yeah, you got these hangers-on and flunkies at the local level. And their job is to always make sure whenever black folk look like they're about to get turned up, well, y'all better calm down. What would Dr. King say? This ain't the way, and we're going to overcome them with our love, and we're going to put our trust in Joe Biden and the Democrats because they've done so much to us. For us. That's what their job is. Yeah, y'all young people out here, y'all need to simmer down. Y'all gonna lose me my seat at the next NAACP spring luncheon, or the Urban League summer luncheon, or the National Action Network fall fish fry, or James Clyburn's fish fry, or She the People's winter potluck, or whatever free meal these clowns are looking to get. You see, we never actually choose our own leaders. That's one of the problems that we've had. We haven't actually chosen our own leaders because white supremacy's made it a point to try to beat us to the punch on that. They give a platform, such as it is, to their chosen black flunkies, and they make sure that before you even get anything in place, here comes some fool and it's like, where did this guy get this money from? Who's propping this guy up? And how come whenever he shows up on TV, you never see the white media attacking these guys? That's your first clue that this person happens to be fighting against black people's interests. If they were actually working for black people's interests, the white media would be attacking them, casting aspersions on them, saying, but what about this? What about that? They'd be doing everything that they could to undermine and destroy them. And they would also make sure, hey, we're going to talk about you when you're not here. We're going to have a segment about troublemakers, making sure that you're front and center. Oh, we're not attacking you specifically. We're just going to say we're attacking troublemakers and then make sure that you're the example that we attack. See, the white media understands that when it comes to black people, anytime they're talking about black people, it's always going to be in the negative. Whether it's black athletes, whether it's black entertainers, what have you, it's always something in the negative. So you see some black person smiling on some white media outlet, and the white media is not sitting there tearing them down and attacking them. That's deliberate. They're trying to show you, oh, well, this guy, he must be clean, or at the very least, the white media is treating this guy with something of respect, and you should too. They're not, you notice how they're not attacking him. That's what they do with their hand-picked, cherry-picked flunkies. We were not the ones who chose these fools, who pretend to be our leaders and spokesmen for us. They're not leaders, they are misleaders. They were appointed solely by the very white media who put them on. They're allowed to be on TV and give them plenty of airtime and never attack them because they don't want to undermine their token flunky. And as a result, we're supposed to think that they represent you and me. This is supposed to make them prominent. This is supposed to give them legitimacy. And as I explained to you, legitimacy means authority conferred on them by other people. But the other people is you and me. White power did not confer authority on them. We did by fiat. We did because of the fact that we basically decided we were not going to challenge them. And that's the reason why when it comes to any fool calling himself going to be a representative or spokesman for us, we got to check out your paperwork. This Warnock character who wants to call himself being a senator, we got to check out your paperwork. You got to show me how many points did you put on the board attacking white supremacy. You got to show me that you put in some work for black empowerment. It can't just be, well, I'm running against Trump. Well, I know how discontent y'all are at the grassroots level, so I'm going to say that the Democrats, you're not going to get away with doing nothing for us. You know how long we've been hearing that crap? We've been hearing that crap for over 100 years now. Well, I'm going to go and tell them Democrats, you black people have been left out for too long and you're not going to get away with doing nothing for us. Notice how none of these bastards ever say what they're going to do to ensure that black people are no longer neglected. None of them makes it very clear. I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm drawing a red line here to let you know I'm going to make things impossible. I'm going to be a professional obstructionist until my people get broken off something. Nobody ever says that. Nobody ever says what the or else is going to be, and that's deliberate. The Black Bootlick's job is to stop this drive for black empowerment. Part of black empowerment is putting white supremacy on notice, making it clear what the or else is. Their job is to get us away from that. Go ahead and pretend as if I'm speaking for black people's anger, but they never say what the or else is going to be. We don't need yet another empty suit who's going to sit there and pretend to talk tough. We need to make it very clear the red lines are being drawn and that we are going to begin waging political war against the system that has been waging real war against us. So that Warnock character, right now, he happens to be part of the second tier of the enemies within. He's part of that second tier. And others just like him. Now, he wants to be part of the first tier, give himself a political post. He needs some sort of political office that he can hold. He's trying to climb out of the second tier into the first tier. But you see that where he is right now, and he's not going to change. Reminds me of that chump who invited Bloomberg to Mother Emanuel AME Church in Selma. These enemies within the second tier, they're not politicians or media figures. But as we've seen with Al Sharpton, and now with this Warnock character, that second tier of enemies within, they desperately aspire to make it to that first rung, the top rung of being a bootlick. This is the reason why Malcolm decades ago said black nationalism would be defined as control of the economics and the politics of the areas in which we live. And understand, as long as our political organizing is not robust enough, where we have barriers set up where in the black community, you can't even get anybody to look at you unless you spell out specifically what it is that you've done. You got to show the work that you've put in for black empowerment. You also have to show that you are an ardent enemy of white supremacy in all of its forms, that you want a job not merely to be a spokesperson for black folks. Any black person can do that, but that you want to be in a position to wage war on white supremacy in the electoral political arena. You show that you want to do that. That's supposed to be the price of entry. Ain't supposed to be just because you had some white TV station to put you on. Or you got Nancy Pelosi and her high-powered, deep pockets friends floating you a couple of no-interest loans for your political campaign. That's not supposed to be the way it works. In the black community, we're supposed to be able to set the terms for who gets to have our vote and who doesn't. And it can't be a matter of, well, you got some idiot and he paid to have some of these no-goodniks running around doing his bidding. That's the third tier. We'll get to them in just a moment. Because you notice how each one supports the tier above it. White supremacy structured these guys this way because they didn't put this together on their own. The enemies within did not put this structure together themselves. White supremacy did. And the first rung is supported by the second rung. And the second rung is supported by the third one. Each one relies on the other because that's how white supremacy set them up. But these enemies within, they understand that they only get to keep their position as long as white supremacy allows them to. And that's why all of them, no matter which rung of the enemies within ladder they happen to be positioned on, all of them are out there just terrified to death of the day the white power disapproves of them. But let's make sure we get something straight. The reason that we have all of this off-code behavior going on is because of the fact that when it comes to the political arena, there's an enormous vacuum in the black community. One that white power keeps filling with one turncoat traitor after the next, one political whore after the next. They do it at the electoral and media level, and they also do it at the local level too, with these second-tier enemies within. Their purpose is to derange our internal politics. Every time black people get together, you're going to have a few of these fools in the room, and they start making sure that they are the loudest and the wrongest who are talking. It's a matter of, well, y'all can't be talking about this black empowerment stuff. Well, y'all's got to be realistic. See, I just got back from the NAACP winter luncheon, and we just got through having a resolution at the Urban League spring luncheon, and over at Jim Clyburn's fall fish fry, we had a little resolution that we had to talk this. See, I've talked with Jim Clyburn. Jim Clyburn, don't you know he is the highest ranking black person in the U.S. Congress? Yes, indeed he is. That's what they start doing. They start trying to tout the fact that they bump elbows with this or that bootlick as being their qualifications to speak. Never mind the fact that what should come out first is anytime some fool wants to talk about who they've been bumping elbows with, first thing I want to know is, what the hell do you have to show for it? What have you achieved for black people? Or have you only achieved something for yourself? Because if all you're doing is talking about the social circles you're in, they ain't hitting on nothing. That's what you did for yourself. And I don't listen to a bunch of self-interested fools. You don't get to come amongst the group and tell us what our agenda should be based on your own personal self-interest. That ain't how this works. And when I see you bumping elbows with and palling around with a bunch of do-nothing scumbags, with a bunch of traitors who ain't produced a damn thing for black people and who have been aggressively working against our interests for decades, as far as I'm concerned, you're part of the problem. But what happens is every time we get together at the local level, we keep letting every Tom, Dick, and Harry who happens to suffer from diarrhea of the mouth get up to speak, and we got to stop that. You start talking about black people being on code, and these second-tier bootlicks, these pork-chop preachers and their assorted wannabes, they immediately start saying that we have to include everyone else. Why, you got to be realistic. You got to include everyone now. What would Jesus say? Martin Luther King, he was about everybody, and we won't get anything unless we have coalitions. Yeah, they start insinuating in the white supremacist talking points. They start layering in those talking points. They start insinuating that in very carefully. Oh, we got to have coalitions now, coalitions. They never say that black people should be leading a coalition. See, a coalition would only make sense to me to the limited extent that it would only make sense to me if black people are leading the coalition. That's what Dr. John Henry Clark taught. You cannot have an alliance with anyone unless you have a means by which to punish those who break the alliance. And our history should have taught us by now that every time we call ourselves trying to make coalitions and alliances, we always wind up with a dagger, or at least 5 or 10 daggers in our backs, and going, man, who put those daggers there? Your ally did. That's who. And these second-tier bootlicks, whenever we're talking to amongst ourselves, they're the ones who tell us, you better not say you want tangibles. You can't be specific now, because that's going to make these white Democrats angry, and you're going to lose support from these white liberals now. Of course, these second-tier bootlicks, they can never point out where all of this alleged white political support has been up until now. They can never show us all of the things we've actually gotten from all of this white political support from the Democrats, or from the Republicans for that matter. Yeah, if we're going to be losing support, shouldn't you be able to show us the support that we've been given? Because it's hard to lose what you never had. But that second tier of enemies within, they've been made to look like the idiots they are. As Joe Biden has made it very clear that he's taken a hard turn to the right to get them Biden Republicans. Oh, he's trying to do everything that he can to appeal to the casual racist read white moderates. And the would-be black power brokers who thought that they were going to be on the inside, they're getting shuffled off to the side. Biden's not even having the decency to wait until he takes the oath of office before he starts slapping them around. He's made it very clear, now that I got this doggone election, you idiots, it's not like you're going to go anywhere else. You've already shown that you're too stupid and too weak to do so, and a lot of y'all are depending on white power for every crumb of your daily bread. So go ahead and take this abuse with a smile, because I ain't going to stop. He's already showing nothing but naked contempt, and why shouldn't he? You have had a lot of these black bootlicks who have conditioned these white leftists to make it very clear that they don't mind being abused. So since you don't mind being abused, here comes the abuse. I mean, Amy Allison, here's just a feckless, brainless moron if there ever was one. You've had Democrats like Joe Biden saying, oh, we've got the black community's backs. The black community's got our backs and we've got yours. And now you got Governor Newsom in California. He says Kamala Harris's Senate seat is going to go to a Hispanic male. Yeah. Latinos were the ones who delivered the state of Florida to Trump. But you know what? We're not going to make it clear to the Latinos that, hey, because of the fact that you guys were not a solid enough voting bloc for us, don't be asking for much. This would be a good opportunity to discipline them and make sure they understand. You're not going to be getting this because of the fact that you broke bad. You should have gone ahead. If all of you had gone in like the black folks did, then you'd have gotten something. No, but instead what they're making it very clear is this is not based on whether or not the Latinos supported the Democrats or not. Both political parties understand that the real enemy that they are going up against is black people. And they're making it clear to Hispanics, we may not be keen on the idea, but we're going to go ahead and make you an honorary members of the oppressor class, at least for rhetorical purposes. We're going to make sure the white power puts its economic and political leverage behind you, its political and economic heft behind the Hispanics to make sure that they're going to be elevated to all manner of positions. And this is going to be for the sake of making it where anytime the black people call themselves doing something, there's going to be some Hispanic person that you're going to have to be going through. And this is a matter of elevating one group over another, which is exactly what's going on here. It doesn't make political sense at all to show black women this kind of disrespect, but it makes all the sense in the world under white supremacy that we're going ahead and we are putting all the pieces in place now for what's going to be a permanent black underclass. That is what's actually going on here. That's what's actually being manufactured and put in place. And Amy Allison and after all the empty promises that she made, after all the pathetic talking points that she uttered, she thought that she was on the inside track because now she looks like a complete and thorough idiot. Or in other words, she looks like a black feminist is what she looks like. Because here she was carrying the water, selling the soap. And she gets on Twitter now, and all she can do is do a little Twitter barrage. But even then, her barrage shows how stupid she is, that this woman is not really on black people's side. She's throwing a temper tantrum. As soon as the Democrats invite her to the next fish fry or invite her to the next little conference that they got, she'll pipe down. That'll be I think she's only doing it for purposes of just for show. She knows there's going to be a lot. Her job is to mislead black women, and a lot of black women, not all, but enough, throw in their lot with her. And now that they're feeling stupid, now that they're looking and going, man, they just made fools out of us. Her job is to pretend, I'm indignant about this too. So disappointed, so very disappointed. And that's why we have to vote Democrat in 2022 in the midterm. That's why we have to vote for the Democrats in 2 years. Amy Allison could not be more clear about her duplicity. Who the hell would follow this schizophrenic heifer? She does nothing but talk about women of color all the time. Women of color. I guess she would have felt better if Newsom had appointed a Hispanic woman instead. But Amy Allison does nothing but talk about women of color. And then at the very end of her little screed, as an afterthought, she throws in black women. She mentions women of color 4 times. Mentions black women once. And there will be black women who are still at this late date going to be stupid enough to think that an intersectionalist feminist like Amy Allison is actually concerned about black women. No amount of evidence is going to dissuade a certain number. And of course, she's not alone. According to the Sacramento Bee article, there's another organization of do-nothing fools calling themselves Higher Heights. An organization dedicated to growing black women's political leadership, or at least that's supposed to be their brand. And apparently they have a problem with the fact that a black woman didn't get Kamala Harris's seat. I don't know how to break it to you, but given the fact that Kamala Harris, when you look at who her Jamaican father is, who never identified himself as black, it's safe to say that a black woman didn't have that seat when she was in it. In the article, this Higher Heights organization is griping that Padilla's appointment to Kamala Harris's seat, it may be a step forward for the Latino community, but it's a significant step back for women and an even further step back for black women. So you got this organization who is allegedly dedicated to growing black women's political leadership. But when they lodge their complaint, the first thing that they do is they talk about women in general, and they leave black women dead last. This is supposed to be what qualifies as a black women's organization. You see, these groups are nothing more than clumsy fronts for white feminists. That's what they've always been. That's where their money comes from. That's who they bump elbows with, who their associations are with. And that's who set them up in the first place. Oh, they got a problem with Newsom having passed over a slate of extremely qualified women. Wait a minute, you're supposed to be saying black women? Aren't they there to represent black women's interests? Aren't they supposed to be there to promote black women in positions of political leadership? But they only mentioned black women one time, and they mentioned women in general 3 times. A step back for women, extremely qualified women candidates. You see, that's a form of subtle indoctrination. When you have people who claim that they're speaking for black folks, but all they ever do is talk about people in general. That's just another way of saying colorblind, rising tide lifts all boats. We can't talk about race. That's another way of doing it. They treat black as something that, well, I can only mention that sparingly. I really don't want to harp on that. I really don't want to make too big an issue of that. I'll mention it in passing as an afterthought, but I don't really want to have to stomp on that issue too much. I really don't want to drill that into people's minds. We don't want to mention that too much. In fact, we probably shouldn't mention it at all. Yeah, this is supposed to be your black feminist here. But even if you were dumb enough to put any faith in them, and I'm not so naive as to think that with an audience anytime you get more than 10 black people in a room, you always got 1 or 2 bad actors. When you got 65,000 plus, like I got from my channel here, and the more than that who actually regularly check out what it is that I'm saying, I'm not so naive as to think that I don't have a few of them here. Who do you think it is that gives the thumbs down to my videos, by the way? Well, tell me, what is it that Amy Allison's produced for you? All you black feminists out there, and all of you intersectionalists, and all of you other fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools who have been drinking the Kool-Aid, just out of curiosity, what does Amy Allison produce for you? You did exactly what she said, and what did you get for it? You did exactly what Higher Heights said, and how have they represented you? You've been listening to these fools, and you've been ignoring the black grassroots because you were going to get something. What have you been getting besides more abuse? Oh, the abuse is intensified. Why shouldn't it? You have not punished the powers that be. You have not defied them. You have rewarded them for their anti-black racism and attacks, so now the attacks are intensifying. That's what happens when you reward anti-black racism. Yeah, I haven't been hearing too much of the stupidity about, well, Donald Trump is racist. He ain't gonna do nothing for us. I haven't been hearing much of that in the last few weeks. Yeah, it's because the Democrats are making it very clear they've got to step up their timetable now because of the work that the black media's been doing. See, the reason that Gavin Newsom didn't even think about putting a black woman in Kamala Harris's seat was because of the fact that Biden made it very clear you don't have to. In fact, Biden made it clear you don't want to do that. This is all about accelerating and speeding up the timetable for just Xing black people out altogether. That's what's going on here. This is not a matter of we got to keep black people pacified. This is a matter of you got those black people at the grassroots, those professional agitators. They're making our job a lot more difficult. They're pushing for tangibles and they're not stepping down. They're getting black folks organized. Ooh, we need to hurry up and go ahead and just make black people as irrelevant as we can. We need to hurry up and vault every other conceivable group over them. We're not going to be able to slow walk black people to oblivion because they're fighting back early ahead of schedule. They weren't supposed to be putting up this kind of resistance this early, this soon. They weren't supposed to be putting up any resistance at all. And all of these fakers, frauds, phonies, fools, the pulpit pimps, and all of these sock puppets, and all of these first generation immigrants and such, and all of these black feminists, and all of these cable TV nobodies, they haven't been able to get these Negroes to calm down. So we just got to go for it now. We just got to go ahead and just say, forget it, to hell with it. We can't wait. We got to hurry up and put the screws to these black people now as quickly as we can. And as a result, what's happening is the second tier bootlicks, they're looking now very, very stupid. because they were the ones saying that, oh, things are going to be better under Joe Biden, and black people are going to, all these people talking about tangibles, oh, there's going to be some stuff. And what they're finding is, nope, ain't going to be much of anything at all. Oh, there'll be a couple of token positions for this or that bootlick, but that's all you're going to be getting. This is all about letting black people know, as Joe Biden said, Hispanics outnumber you. This is them making it very clear. We white Democrats don't care that Hispanics were more interested in supporting Trump than they were supporting us. We don't care about the fact that we're as likely to lose what little Latino support we think we've got as easily as we thought we had it. What this is about is having some sort of demographic counterweight to black people. That's what this is about. And of course, because of the fact that most Hispanics classify themselves as white, it'll be an easy sell to tell them why you guys, especially given the culture that you come from in Mexico and all the racism there, and Central America and all the racism there, and South America and all the racism there, why you guys think of yourselves as being better than black people, and there's all sorts of anti-black racism in these Latin countries, and why you're practically Europeans yourselves when you think about it. And there's going to be a whole lot of Latinos who are going to go for that. That's the reason why they mark themselves as being white on their driver's licenses and job applications and everything else. Now these Western European white supremacists, they're not fooled by that at all. But the thing is, they'll go ahead and indulge them just like they do in Latin America. That's what the Blancos, the ruling class in Latin America, have done. They're not at all fooled by these mestizos trying to claim that there's something that they're not. The thing is, the white folks in the United States, the white supremacists up here, they'll play along with it. And the Latinos will think that they are advancing when the truth of the matter is, this is just simply going to be a reshuffling of the deck chairs. That's all. But Biden, you better believe, if he had wanted for a black woman to get that seat, there would be a black woman getting it. You better believe that that came from Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden themselves. A black woman better not get that seat. It's going to have to go to some non-black person, preferably Hispanic. And the reason why is we are accelerating the timetable of trying to marginalize black people completely and thoroughly out of existence. We're turning up the screws as far as marginalizing black folks to the very fringes of the political arena. This is about edging black people out. Oh, forget about edging black people out. This is about shoving black people out. It's going to be a matter of you're getting put on the sidelines. Oh, forget about the sidelines. You're getting put out altogether. And you better not make too much noise about it. Because the one or two of you idiots who we allow to have one or two token positions, you better be damn glad to get it. Because you'll be the only ones getting anything. See, white power set up the peoples. White power set up the higher heights and others. That's the reason why you're never going to see these idiots saying, you know what, maybe it's time to show these clowns our discontent and show them that we can be their best friends or their worst enemies. We can get them into high office or we can make it impossible for them to get there. They're never going to do that because that's not what they were set up to do. These are nothing more than thinly veiled auxiliaries for the white left. That's all that She the People and Higher Heights and the rest of these con game organizations are. That's who set them up, that's who put them there, and that's whose interests they are there to serve. And when black people look and say, well, I thought we were supposed to be getting something. Well, Amy, didn't you tell us that we were going to be getting something? Her job's like, oh, well, I'm disappointed. I am so disappointed. Yeah, there'll be a little bit of faux pretend fuming, and then they'll turn right around and say, and that's why we got to vote for the Democrats in 2 years. We got to vote for them because the Republicans would be even worse. Sure, you're getting nothing from the Democrats, but from the Republicans, you would get less than nothing. And this is what you see from the second tier of the enemies within. But as harmful as the first and second tiers of enemies within have been, that third tier, we got to be very, very aware that the third tier happens to be, in my opinion, the most dangerous, because they're also the ones that we're going to have the hardest time dealing with. The third tier happens to be the Bushika, Pookie, and Ray Ray contingent. See, it's very easy to throw stones at the Kamala Harrises and the D-Ray McKessons and such, because these clowns, they are walking billboards against themselves. They're very easy to spot. It's not very hard to do. They happen to be annoying and aggravating and obnoxious, but the thing about it is we can see them readily. And these are not the ones who we contend with on a daily basis. They are not the most overt obstacles to us getting black folks on code. It's that third tier. That third tier of the enemies within, because a lot of you are not going to like what I'm going to be saying, because it's going to be talking about you, and you're right. A lot of black folks are taking on a lot of bad habits. A lot of black folks have decided they're going to engage in a lot of anti-black behavior, and they'll try to lie and claim, well, we was doing this in Africa. First of all, I don't want to ever hear that line. First thing to remember is there's a lot of people lie and claim that black people were doing stuff in Africa that we never actually did. And the second problem that comes out of that lie is there's a lot of stuff that was going on in Africa that were wrong. A lot of stuff going on in Africa that was dead wrong, should never have been happening in the first place. How do you think the European was able to enslave and colonize Africa? How do you think they were able to do that? That is a sign of just how bad things had gotten. The fact that there was a whole lot of off-code behavior going on there that still persists to the present day. So don't sit here and tell me that you're going to hide behind the rhetoric of, well, we was doing this in Africa as some sort of bulletproof shield to hide behind to ward off any and all criticism when you're doing stuff you know you ain't supposed to be doing. It's the lowest common denominator who tries to hide behind that. Why? This was going on in Africa. There's a lot of bad stuff that was going on in Africa. We see it today with a lot of the disrespect coming from these African immigrants. Hell, you can look at the tribalism going on in Africa and the fact that they can't even put their heads together. They're being invaded wholesale by a bunch of foreigners, and these Africans cannot put their heads together. What does that tell you? See, that goes on. That's been a long-standing aspect of African culture too, by the way. You got hood rats twerking and trying to claim, oh, no, this got something to do with Africa. Tell me something. Did all the bedwenching going along with all the hiking up your skirt for massa, were black people doing that thousands of years ago in Africa? I'll wait. You see, culture is not defined from the top down. It's defined by the bottom up. But culture happens to come out of and grow out of resources. Because resources are what defines what kind of culture you're going to have and to what extent that culture is going to be promoted. That's the reason why 13 plus years ago I said that the mission of the black media is to take control of the social and political discourse within the black community. Because you see, white power is going to be using its money to be setting up all sorts of counter forces against us. They're going to be trying to do everything that they can to derange black culture by defining it. White power has been trying to define black culture. And there's been a lot of black folks, that third tier, who have been going right along with it.
Look, I'm on a birthday break, but I'm going to take a break to come on here and say, Ice Cube ain't shit, Donald Trump ain't shit, that platinum scam ain't shit. If Donald Trump really wanted a black person to help him write a black agenda, then he should have gotten some fucking experts instead of a know-nothing rapper who doesn't know shit about how shit works. When I asked his motherfucking ass about black women being in his goddamn contract for Black America, he didn't have a motherfucking answer for why there was no black woman involved with the contract for Black America. It has nothing in there about black children. It has nothing in there about the LGBTQ community. When there is an epidemic of violence against black trans women, and Ice Cube is the motherfucker that's going to help Trump figure this shit out after the motherfucker been president for almost 4 years. Are you kidding me? It's a joke. It's a scam. But I'm glad that Ice Cube, you're exposed for being full of shit. You should have just brought your motherfucking black ass out 3, 4, 5 months ago when you started promoting your contract for Black America and talking about no black agenda, no vote, and all that other kind of bullshit. But you was a motherfucking Trump supporter. But now you've been exposed. Everybody knows how full of shit you are. And let me just be perfectly clear. There is no $500 billion for Black America in Trump's plan. There's no $500 billion. It's a bullet point. It's a headline. There's no $500 billion. Black people, you're not getting fucking reparations. You're not getting free health care. You're not getting a better education. All you're going to get is a motherfucking attempt at herd immunity that's going to take half the motherfucking black population out. That's what you're going to get under Trump. So you need to vote wisely and stop listening to these dumbass rappers like Ice Cube and Waka Flocka, period.
Did you, get that? Now, amidst all of the nonstop cursing, there were two things that stuck out to me. First of all, I think it's safe to say that this hood rat is absolutely no supporter of reparations. And when I get around to her Twitter bio, you'll understand why that is. But the second thing I thought to be noteworthy was she actually had the nerve to say that if Trump was serious about his blankety blank 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 plan, then he would bring in some experts. See, this is what happens when you sit around 8 hours a day smoking a joint, arguing with your various baby daddies, who you may or may not be sure are the fathers of your bastard children. This is what you wind up with. This is the mentality you get. You see, when you say black experts, what the hell are you talking about? You talking about experts, who are you talking about? Are you talking about Jim Clyburn? Are you talking about empty suits like Jason Johnson? You see, the so-called experts that she would talk about are the very hand-picked, cherry-picked black puppets who white power put in their academies and their universities as a means of credentializing their bootlicks. Why, you need to listen to Jason Johnson. We gave him a university job, so you should listen to him. And you should listen to these other pinheads that we've given these jobs to, experts like who? Ta-Nehisi Chokes. I don't think this idiot even watched that fraud that took place, the so-called reparations hearing, where you had these so-called experts, all of them saying that black folks don't need any money. Oh, maybe clowns like Jonathan Capehart, who wrote an entire article saying black people need a hug. They want a hug from white supremacy. They don't want money. They don't need money. Yeah, see, white supremacy's already talked to the experts. They know who the experts are because they're the ones who created them. And this is who she says Donald Trump should be talking to. Talk to the experts. Gee, I don't understand why he wouldn't want to talk to a ranting, raving, profanity-laden hood rat. I mean, who wouldn't want to get the sage advice from her, huh? And get advice for what? What advice is she going to give? No reparations. That's her plan. That's her idea. I don't know why, but whenever I see some light-skinned hood rat cursing and ranting, and she can't even form a coherent sentence, and here she is just cursing to beat the band, every other word out of her mouth is some sort of obscenity, it reminds me of some other light-skinned ranter that we've seen, and I ain't gonna be mentioning no names because these nobodies don't need to be named, but can you think of some other person like that? You know, basically who curses all the time and thinks to herself that this makes her some sort of pseudo-intellectual. Because this is them doing their impersonation of what they think black people are like. This is an expression of self-hate. When it comes time to talk to black people about serious issues, body bag issues, issues of life and death, and about whether or not our people are going to remain on this earth, you don't show up deciding to show how many four-letter words you can throw around, talking as if you're a drunk wino on a street corner. But this is the class and caliber of that third tier of the enemy within. This is why hood rats and dusty dudes, that third tier, they don't need to be on the internet. Obviously, this Bushika bastard baby maker is clout chasing. That's why she's mentioning Ice Cube's name, because she desperately wants clicks. I guess that single mom on Instagram thing didn't exactly pan out. But you notice how the first thing she talks about is, I want to know from Ice Cube, what about black women's? Last time I checked, black women are part of black America, at least 50% of black America. When you say black America, in what fever dream, asinine, lobotomized mind would 50% of black people not qualify as black America? See, that's feminist thinking right there. That's the kind of divisive garbage the white feminists brought in. When they say black people, they're not talking about black women. Black women are not black. And what that really tells for a certain segment of black people who want to escape being black, they like that idea. They secretly like it. They pretend that they don't like it, but in reality they do. Because it gives them entree to say, what about black women? I am a woman. I am defined by my womanness. Woman. And that's the reason why these white women over here, they need to bring me into their organization. That's what the black feminist mindset is. So first thing out of this rancid little hood rat's mouth, talking about what about black women, as if black women are not part of black America. See, that's not what she thinks about Ice Cube. That's what she thinks about herself. And then she says, what about black children? And that's the last time she mentions black children, because apparently black children are not part of black America either in her mind. And then after that, she gets to what she really wants to talk about. And you could tell that that's what she really wanted to talk about because of how long she spent talking about it. What about the LGBT community? There's all these attacks on trans women. No, there's not. That's a bald-faced lie. But the thing is, she's going ahead and spouting this garbage. So what does that tell you? This woman hates black people with a passion. That's what it tells you, because all she can do is run black people into the ground. All she can do is spread white supremacist lies about black people, try to drive wedges of division at a time when unity is what's called for. But you notice how when she gets around to talking about the LGBT community, she stops all the cursing. Notice how she manages to be able to actually express herself without all the profanity when she gets around to talking about them. Talking about black people, especially black men, here come the 4-letter words. But when talking about the LGBTQ community and talking about what black people shouldn't expect, but especially talking about these other groups, all of a sudden she manages to form a sentence without cursing. You notice that? Reminds you of Roly-Poly Martin, now don't it? She's griping about black feminists, because that's what she's really meaning. She ain't meaning black women. She's talking about black feminists. She can't tell you anything about black women, but, black women, what she means is herself. Ice Cube, you need to have me there. Yeah, because who wouldn't want some light-skinned hood rat cursing and carrying on in front of them? Oh, that's how you form a good policy. That's how you form intelligent policy for a society. You bring in the person who's the loudest, the wrongest, and the most profane. You let them spew 4-letter words, and I'm sure you'll get intelligent policy out of that. She's ranting about the LGBTQ community. By the way, you never see LGBT anything ranting about black people. You'll see them sitting there saying, why are black people getting so much attention? Why don't you know that there was some trans woman who somebody misgendered the other day? You got this fool, she's putting on the cape for everybody except for black folks. And then she wonders why it is ain't nobody talking about her raggedy behind. Oh, but you notice how in the end she says, and y'all black folks, listen to him. That's why y'all got to, just Trump supporters. Ice Cube's not a Trump supporter. What he made it very clear is that black people's vote must be bid on. If Joe Biden wants black people's vote, he's going to have to put in his bid. Now, she's sitting here talking about Donald Trump's $500 billion. That's just talk. He's never going to do that. Well, in that case, then, just out of curiosity, what about Joe Biden's proposal, which was, as I showed you guys, it was a lower dollar figure of the exact same scheme. I mean, Trump and Biden's so-called plans for Black America were basically copy and paste of the same thing. Couple of minor number changes, but neither one of them planned to do anything. But now that Joe Biden is going to be in office, I wonder if our little cursing hood rat is going to be keeping tabs on whether or not Joe Biden comes through with anything for black people. So what about him? Nah, that's going to conveniently be allowed to fall down the memory hole, not to be mentioned. Because after all, if it's a matter of we got to hold Donald Trump to a standard, great. We got to hold Joe Biden to one too, right? No. He ain't got to do nothing for us. He chose Kamala Harris as his VP, and that's all he's got to do for black people. So you see, the problem is that this hood rat has is the problem that a lot of the enemy within have. When you got black people who actually start attaching our vote to demands that will empower us. Because the only thing that the enemies within can think about is their access to non-black people for sexual access or for some sort of job or for attention. And that's the reason why they're always thinking to themselves, I do not want to displease these non-black folks who I'm hoping to get some sort of job from or to get some sexual access from. You're going to mess it up for me. That's what they're really thinking. That's what motivates their anger, fear. I've taught you about that, how whenever you got these fools who are sitting here ranting and raving and angry and all loud and raging, it's because of the fact that they're scared. Fear motivates most expressions of anger. And her fear is she's going to be cut off from whatever white feminist that she would like to be in good with or otherwise curry the favor of. She wants to be considered an honorary member of the oppressor class, preferably a white woman. And as far as she's concerned, Ice Cube's going to complicate that because he's demanding something and saying that black folks' interests have to be put first, and she doesn't want to be thought of as black. She wants to be thought of as LGBTQ. She wants to be thought of as a woman. She wants to be thought of as biracial. She wants to be thought of as a one-eyed, one-horned, blind, purple people eater. But please don't go reminding people that she might actually be considered black in any shape, form, or fashion. She'll come up to you and tell you vote against your interests. But then when you ask, well, what exactly am I voting for? What am I going to get from Biden? Well, he ain't Trump. That's all he's got to do. He ain't Trump. Well, what's he going to do? Biden's claiming he's going to be allocating billions of dollars for black people. Do you actually think that's going to happen? Well, probably not, but he's not as bad as Trump. In other words, a distinction without a difference. A courteous racist, or in the case of Biden, he's not even courteous. Biden is simply somewhat a little bit less rude than Trump. And I'm supposed to believe that this is doing great things for black people. So you got this wrinkled up racist who's only marginally less rude to black people than Donald Trump. And somehow this is supposed to be some sort of big difference. Only in the mind of a hood rat. Now, because I'm fascinated with bizarre oddities like this, I did wonder what kind of bottom feeder would be cursing and carrying on like this. I did have a certain morbid curiosity about it, so I looked at this hood rat's Twitter bio and, not surprisingly, she has tagged both Roly-Poly and Kamala Harris. Well, someone should tell Miss Hoodrat that given how profane she talks and how she was concerned with everyone except for black people, it's kind of redundant for her to mention Roland Martin and Kamala Harris in her bio. We pretty much figured, as dumb as this woman is, that she's probably fans of both of those two idiots. So she didn't have to actually mention them, though it is nice to have the confirmation. See, if you're running around calling yourself being some sort of cheerleader for the Democrats at this late date, if you're calling yourself following the white media's talking points and you got to repeat whatever their black bootleg flunkies say, you're in the same company as this clown. See, Roland Martin, every time he gets mad at black folks, he starts cursing up a storm. But when he talks to or about white people, especially when he talked with Richard Spencer, if he's talking about white supremacists, all of a sudden he drops the profanity. He starts talking like he's got some sense and some manners and some home training. He doesn't get all profane and vulgar when he's talking to or about white supremacists. But when he's talking to black folks, all of a sudden he's cursing. All of a sudden he's condescending. All of a sudden he's getting all profane. Like apparently he thinks he's the head Negro in charge, anointed by massa. When it comes to black people, he shows no respect whatsoever. When it comes to black people, he talks to black people like dogs. And this hood rat does the same thing. Kamala Harris is concerned with everyone except for black people. And this hood rat's the same. I just use her as a case study. This will be the last time I bring this idiot up. And you won't be surprised to see that she heaps all kinds of praise on the congressional black talkers. And she says there needs to be far more awareness about the way black leaders in Congress are leading the charge and the value of the CBC. Are you kidding? This woman's on crack. She never actually says what these do-nothing clowns are leading the charge to. Because from where I'm standing, the only thing the congressional black talkers have ever led the charge to is off a cliff. She wants more awareness about the value of the Congressional Black Caucus. Well, it's hard for me to praise or to give any value to people who ain't done a damn thing. But this hood rat, she's trying to pretend as if these guys have done all sorts of great things. She just can't tell you what they've done, that's all. And not surprisingly, this little, I have no idea what this swearing in is supposed to be about, but this is going to be on TV One, or as I like to call them, TV None. And for those of you who wonder why I never praised TV None, this is why. This is the reason why the old dead black media is on life support right now. This is the reason why these guys, we had to go ahead and bury the old black media. We had to go ahead and call the time of death because this is the kind of garbage that they're engaged in. See, it's bad enough that long ago, decades ago, the Jets and the Ebonies and the Essences and such, or the old black media decided, the black enterprises, they decided that they wanted white acceptance. And that white acceptance would come in the form of white advertiser dollars. They wanted white corporations to take out ads in their publications. And to them, this was going to be acceptance, because it would mean more money in the pockets of the publishers of these black publications. But in the meanwhile, they're getting black people to put Ford cars and GM cars in front of black folks, while Ford and GM were laying black folks off and racially discriminating against black people. If you were a black person, you paid something like 25% more for a Ford or GM vehicle than a white person did. And yet you had these black publications who were just licking their chops. Can we go ahead and put this or that white TV, the white fashion jeans, or can we put some white toothpaste company or white breakfast cereal in our publication? Because to them, this was white acceptance. For the publishers of these black publications, well, for the few who stayed in publishing, a lot of them got bought out. And TV None and BET, they went a step further than that. Jason broke down for you how BET, Bob Johnson, he took that white money, and one of the things they told him was you cannot be political. But of course, political actually meant you can't be telling black people to be fighting for their interests. Coonery and buffoonery is fine. Go ahead and put on some rappers and put on some comedy shows, but nothing serious. This is about keeping black people amused, while white power runs roughshod over them and plans how it's going to phase black people out, how white supremacy is going to continue to choke black people out of existence. Go ahead and keep them amused while we do that. TV None presented itself as being the alternative to BET, but as we all see, that turned out to predictably be nothing more than just another con game, because black people were already, enough of black people were showing their discontent with BET 20 years ago. Enough black people were looking and going, you know what, we're tired of the buffoonery. And TV None came along. White people say, oh, we're going to set up this little Trojan horse and they're going to tell black people, hey, we're going to be the intelligent alternative to BET. And what did they do? We're going to put Roland Martin on the payroll. Well, that's your first sign right there. This ain't going to be about nothing. But the reason that I put this out there is so that we can understand this happens to be the enemy within. And you always have to keep that in mind. You don't ever let yourself believe that just the white supremacists are the only ones we're dealing with. They have an entire apparatus of non-black flunkies that they've got under them doing their bidding. We've got our work cut out for us, but here's the good news. There's still more of us than there are of them. And as we become more and more organized, as we stay on code and on target, what's going to happen is the Amy Allisons and the others, as white supremacy sees the pressure that we put on them, and white supremacy is forced to have to respond more aggressively even sooner than they had planned to, because that's what we did. We messed up their whole timetable. And as we continue to put pressure on white supremacy, the Amy Allisons and the D. Ray McKessons and the rest of these fools, the ranting hood rats and such. And by the way, before we go any farther, the hood rats, these clowns, what they are hoping for is to get government programs. That's what they concern themselves with. What they want is some sort of government program, or hopefully can you get some sort of busy work, make work job for me, hopefully. But mostly government programs. That's the reason why these guys, they're fine with it. Just long as you say there's going to be some government money, but Joe Biden's making it very clear we're going to be turning off the spigot for that one. And as white power makes it very clear that no matter what their sock puppet front people say, no matter what the Jason Johnsons and other assorted clowns say, nah, there's not going to be anything. We're not even going to be doing anything for the sake of appearances. Kamala Harris's seat, that's going to a Hispanic. Why? Because Joe Biden they're trying to usher in the complete and thorough marginalization of black people. So you'll be having all of these second and third tier enemies within, these bootlicks. They're going to be looking more and more stupid because their promises, their empty fake promises to black people are going to be proven false immediately. And all of their empty denials and the lies that they've told, all these idiots who called themselves trying to attack Ice Cube, they already look like morons now. And in the future, they won't even attempt it. Yes, we've got our work cut out for us, but so what? What else is new? This is just par for the course for us. We knew that this was going to be a marathon, not a sprint, but we're making progress. And you can see that by the fact that the clowns who typically would be sitting on the sidelines just cheerleading for the left arm of white supremacy, now that they've been forced to actually confront the fact of tangibles, issues, black people making real demands, now it's a matter of they have to say, no, not doing anything. And what they're scared of is that black people are going to remember this. This is going to become a permanent part of the political landscape. That's why they set up all of these phony sock puppet organizations. The She the Peoples and the A-Dunces and the Higher Heights and all the rest of these do-nothing groups. That's the reason why they put on these preachers and such. Why, you know this local pastor in your area? Yeah, the guy who hosted James Clyburn's fish fry last year? Yeah, I remember this idiot. Oh, you mean the one who brought Michael Bloomberg to his church and told us vote for Bloomberg? Yeah, I remember that idiot. They are delegitimizing their little tools and puppets. And they're not going to have any new ones to replace them. Sure, they'll bring in some new idiots, but the problem is that position that they have been able to carve out for themselves because the black baby boomers left them, those positions will no longer be available. Oh, they'll be talking, but black people won't be listening. They're going to be listening to the black media, as they should. So now more than ever, your support and your effort is going to be required. All hands on deck. All of us have to be pushing this boulder up the hill. All of us have to be involved. See, the bad guys, they understand the necessity of all of them however they can. It doesn't matter how little they're able to contribute, long as they put something into the kitty, long as they put something in there, long as they say something, long as they do something. And they don't wait to be told. See, the bad guys understand the necessity of being self-starters. Once the ideology has been spoken for, once the code has been spoken for, in that case, then they don't need anybody to give them prompting or anybody to pat them on the back or anyone to point them in this or that direction. We must also be as eagerly prompted in the same way. Part-time effort is not going to topple white supremacy. White supremacy puts full-time money behind its bootlicks. White supremacy puts full-time effort in planning. While you're sleeping, they're plotting. But what you can do where you are is to make it very clear that we know who the enemies within are. These clowns are not fooling anyone. We have to keep up a steady drumbeat, all of us, on all levels, keep up a steady drumbeat against these guys. Because the Amy Allisons and such, these scumbags are on their last legs. And the reason that they are is because of the fact we're not letting black people roll over and hit the sleep button. We're not letting them hit the snooze button anymore. Biden's not going to be allowed to simply be in office, and all he has to do is have Al Sharpton and the rest of the congressional black talkers standing there, and black people are going to be saying, wait a minute here. You got white people who are organizing themselves. The white left is organized. What counts as the white progressive wing is organizing itself and saying, we want to put the arm on Nancy Pelosi. Well, hell, the Congressional Black Caucus, they're in a position right now where they could push for all kinds of things for black people and make it very clear. You know what, Nancy? You ain't getting a vote to be Speaker of the House. You're not going to get to have votes for that. You ain't going to get votes for anything unless we get A, B, and C. But they're not making any sort of demands, and they're not going to. So you got the white progressives making demands, but you got the so-called black leadership that certain hood rats are so enamored with. They're not making any sort of demands at all. No agenda. See, that's what we mean. We talk about the black agenda. You notice the Congressional Black Caucus, they ain't pushing one. This is the perfect opportunity. But instead of them saying, hey, we are prepared to engage in the highest forms of political brinksmanship, we're ready to take things to the edge to get what we want. Instead, it's a matter of, nope, we're little obedient lapdogs over here. And Joe Biden, he was slapping us around week before last. But you know what? When he gets ready to take that oath of office, we want to make sure that we're up there on the dais with him. Make sure we get put in the camera frame along with him. And we're going to go to the presidential ball so we can see him and his wrinkled up wife dancing on black people's graves, mind you. And yeah, sure, he's told us he ain't going to do anything and he's not going to be changing anything. We're not going to get anything. But you know what? As long as he allows us to have a photo op in the Oval Office, that's good enough for us. Well, that might be good enough for these enemies within, but it ain't good enough for me. And it shouldn't be good enough for you. We know who these turncoats are. We know how they've been undermining us and working against us. And it is not enough for us simply to know who they are. We got to make sure that when these clowns start slamming their gums, we call them out and make it clear to everybody, hey, this is part of that enemy within. These are the guys undermining us. These are the guys who are trying to get us to sit on our hands and do nothing while white supremacy finishes the job of strangling us out of existence. White supremacy is not going to fall on its own. It's going to have to be toppled. And that is the glorious task of us all.